There is a word in the Hebrew Bible that appears at some of the most decisive moments in human history. And for 2,000 years, every major translation has rendered it the same way. 2 words, here I am, neat, compact, functional, and almost completely wrong. Not wrong in the sense of being false, wrong in the sense of being too small, because the original word, the Hebrew word hiding behind that translation, is not a statement about physical location. It is not the equivalent of raising your hand in a classroom to confirm your presence. What it actually communicates is something far more dangerous, far more costly, and far more rare than almost anyone who reads those translations ever realizes. The word is hineni. And the moment you understand what hineni actually means, you cannot read a single one of those ancient encounters the same way again. In classical Hebrew, hineni is not a simple locative expression. It does not mean I am standing here in this room, in this body, at these coordinates. It means something closer to, I am completely present. Not partially, not with conditions, not with the silent reservation that I will comply, as long as what you ask falls within the limits I have already decided are acceptable. The word carries within it an absolute posture of availability, a surrender that precedes the request, an openness that exists before the speaker has any knowledge of what is about to be required of them. You are saying yes before you know what you are saying yes to. That is the actual meaning that 2 quiet English words have been quietly erasing for centuries. And the reason that matters is not academic. It matters because of where the word appears, because hineni does not show up in casual conversations or ordinary moments. It surfaces again and again at the exact moments when the cost of saying it is about to become unbearable. Consider the first time it appears in the text in its most concentrated, most devastating form. God had already spoken to Abraham, already made promises, already sealed covenants, already waited through decades of doubt and human impatience, and the entire complicated story of a man trying to make the promise happen through his own arrangements. And then, after all of that, after the miracle birth of Isaac, the son who was supposed to carry every promise forward, the text says something almost unbearable to read slowly. Now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. Hineni. That is the whole response. One word. No question asking what God wants. No hesitation. No negotiation. The word comes before Abraham knows that what is about to be asked of him is the one thing he cannot survive losing. He says hineni before he hears the request. The posture of total availability comes first. The cost comes after. And here is the part that tends to get overlooked entirely. Abraham says hineni twice in that chapter. Once to God at the beginning, when the test is introduced, and once to his son Isaac halfway up the mountain, when Isaac turns around and says, Father, and Abraham answers him, Here I am, my son, hineni. The same word, the same posture of complete presence, to the God who is about to ask the impossible, and to the child who does not yet know, he is the offering. Abraham holds both of those realities simultaneously, with the same single word. That is not the behavior of a man who is simply following instructions. That is the behavior of a man who has somehow arrived at a place where surrender is not the same thing as loss. The word appears again in a completely different register, inside a vision that is almost too overwhelming to describe calmly. Isaiah is in the temple. He sees the Lord seated on a throne, high and lifted up, the train of his robe filling the entire space. Seraphim are present, 6 winged beings who cover their faces and their feet in the presence of what they are standing before, which means even they cannot look directly at it. The doorposts shake. The room fills with smoke, and Isaiah's first response is not awe, it is collapse. He says, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips. He is not performing humility. He is experiencing the structural failure that apparently happens when a human being suddenly perceives the distance between what they are and what they are standing in front of. Then a seraph takes a coal from the altar and touches his lips and says, "Your iniquity is taken away, your sin is purged." And immediately, without a pause, without a moment of processing, without asking for time to consider, comes the question from the voice in the vision, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" Then I said, "Here I am, send me, here I am, hineni." The same posture, but now coming from a man who, 40 seconds earlier, had described himself as undone. A man who had just seen his own inadequacy with a clarity that apparently could not be argued with. And instead of that self-knowledge producing paralysis, it produced the purest form of hineni in the entire text, because this one comes with a request attached. Not just "here I am, send me." Availability so complete that it volunteers before being asked. The problem is that we have domesticated this moment. We have turned it into an inspiring story about a prophet who said yes to God. But that is not what the text is showing. The text is showing a man who should, by any reasonable accounting, have said no, who had just had his own inadequacy demonstrated to him with supernatural clarity, and who said yes anyway, not despite that knowledge. Through it, there is a third encounter with the same word, and it begins in almost complete darkness. A boy is sleeping in the temple. He is young enough that the text goes out of its way to note that he does not yet know the Lord, meaning he has no framework for what is about to happen. The voice calls his name, and he answers immediately that the Lord called Samuel. And he answered, "Here I am." He doesn't know who is speaking. He assumes it's Eli, the priest he serves. He runs to Eli and says, "Here I am, you called me." Eli says he didn't call, go back to sleep. This happens 3 times, and then Eli understands what is happening and tells the boy, "If the voice calls again, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" The 4th time, Samuel says it, and the word that comes to him that night is not a commission or a blessing. It is a devastating judgment on the house of Eli, on the people Samuel loves, delivered to a child who asked to hear it. Hineni, spoken in ignorance, led to a weight that Samuel had no preparation for, and the text records it without apology. The posture of complete availability does not guarantee that what comes next will be comfortable. It guarantees that what comes next will be real. There is a pattern running through every one of these encounters that almost no one states directly. Hineni is never spoken in a moment of safety. Abraham speaks it on the edge of losing everything. Isaiah speaks it seconds after experiencing his own collapse. Samuel speaks it not even knowing to whom he is speaking or what the response will cost him. The word is not spoken from positions of strength or clarity or certainty about outcomes. It is spoken precisely when those things are absent. When you do not know what will be asked. When you already know it might be more than you can carry. When you have just been shown your own inadequacy so thoroughly that there is no remaining argument for your own sufficiency. That is the actual meaning of the word that your translation has been rendering as "here I am." Not a location, not a confirmation of presence, a posture, a stance toward reality that says, "I am not in control of what happens next. I do not know what will be required of me. I have made no prior arrangements about what I will and will not accept. And I am still completely available." The reason this word has survived in texts read across 3,000 years is not because it describes something easy. It is because it describes something every human being eventually faces. The moment when the only way forward requires surrendering the conditions you had quietly placed on your own willingness. When you discover that the version of yes you had been practicing was actually a heavily qualified yes, a yes with footnotes, a yes that secretly meant yes, as long as. Hineni has no footnotes. Almost every significant turning point in the Hebrew scriptures is marked by someone saying it, and almost every one of those turning points involves cost. The word functions almost like a signature. The sign that what is about to happen matters enough that the person speaking will not protect themselves from it. The question that lingers after reading all of these encounters together, and it is a question worth sitting with, not one with a clean answer, is whether the word is ever spoken the same way twice. Whether Abraham's Hineni and Isaiah's Hineni and Samuel's Hineni are really the same posture, or whether each one reveals a different dimension of what it costs to be completely present to something larger than yourself. Whether the word means slightly different things in the mouth of a father on a mountain, and a prophet in a vision, and a child who cannot yet see in the dark. What do you think Hineni costs most? Leave that in the comments, because the best conversations about these ancient words happen when people who have read them carefully refuse to agree too quickly. And if this kind of investigation, the kind that goes underneath the translation to find what the original text is actually doing, is why you come here, subscribe. There are more words like this one. Words that have been carrying a weight the English doesn't show, waiting for someone to slow down long enough to notice.